I'm Andrea. It's been a while since that terrifying night, but the memory still haunts me like a shadow. I remember standing in my living room, frozen, as I stared at the message on my phone, "Don't look outside again." My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was going to burst through my chest. Every muscle in my body was tense, and I could barely breathe. It all started a few months ago when I moved into this old 3-story apartment complex on the outskirts of the city. I was a 28-year-old freelance web developer, finally living on my own after years of sharing apartments with roommates. The building wasn't anything special, just a simple, affordable place. My landlord, Mr. Thompson, lived across the courtyard. He was a middle-aged man with a gruff exterior, always dressed in work clothes. But beneath that tough facade, he was a fair and reliable guy. He fixed things around the building quickly and only bothered us tenants when it was necessary. That fateful night began like any other. I'd finished a long day of work around midnight. I made myself a cup of tea and curled up on the couch with my dog, Max. The TV cast a soft glow over the room, and the sound of rain tapping against the windows was soothing. I dozed off halfway through a movie, wrapped in a warm blanket. Then, at exactly 3 a.m. my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I blinked, half awake, and reached for it. A text from Mr. Thompson read, "Pack your things and leave now. Don't ask questions." I thought it was a mistake. I rubbed my eyes and reread the message twice. What kind of message was this? I texted him back, asking what was going on. His reply came instantly, "I'm serious, Andrea. Leave now. You'll thank me by morning." This second text sent a chill down my spine. I sat up, my heart racing. Max stirred on the couch, sensing my unease. I checked the clock. It was 3:02 a.m. The rain had stopped, and the building was deathly silent. My first thought was that it was some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe Mr. Thompson was sleep texting or confused. But there was something about the tone of his message that felt urgent. I got up and looked around my apartment. Everything seemed normal. There was no smoke, no strange smells, and no unusual sounds. I checked the stove, the outlets, and even peeked through the peephole into the hallway. Nothing seemed out of place. The building was dark and still. I called Mr. Thompson, but he didn't answer. It went straight to voicemail. I called again, with the same result. Then I texted him, saying I wouldn't leave in the middle of the night without an explanation. There was no reply. Just then, Max jumped off the couch, his fur standing on end, and started growling towards the living room window. My stomach dropped. I turned slowly. The blinds were down, but through a small gap, I could see the faint reflection of the streetlight and what looked like movement outside. A quick shadow crossed the courtyard. I tried to convince myself it was just a raccoon or a neighbor coming home late. But Max bolted down the hallway and hid under the bed. I knew something was wrong. I grabbed my phone and texted my brother, Jake. He was a light sleeper, and within seconds, he called me. "Why are you awake at 3 o'clock in the morning?" He mumbled. I explained everything, the texts, the silence, and the movement outside. He instantly woke up. "Andrea, that's not normal. You should leave right now. Don't wait." "I don't even know where I'd go," I said, pacing across the living room. "And I'm not leaving all my stuff behind because of a weird text. There must be a logical reason." "Andrea," he said firmly, "if your landlord told you to leave, he had a reason." I sighed and rubbed my temples. "Maybe, but I don't want to overreact. I'll check the building in the morning." He groaned in frustration. "Just keep your phone on loud and lock your doors, okay?" "Always do," I replied. After the call ended, I walked over to the window again. I lifted one blind slightly and peeked outside. The courtyard was empty. The streetlight flickered faintly over the wet pavement. Nothing moved. I took a deep breath and decided to go back to sleep. But as soon as I turned off the lamp, another message buzzed on my phone. It was from an unknown number. The message read, "Don't look outside again." My throat went dry, and my whole body went cold. I stared at the phone screen, my heart hammering. Someone knew what I had just done. Someone was watching me. I locked my front door again and checked the deadbolt twice. Max was still hiding under the bed, whimpering. I turned on every light in the apartment, trying to ward off the fear. The only sounds were the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock. I texted Jake again, telling him about the new message. He called immediately. "What? From who?" he asked, his voice tense. "I don't know," I whispered. "It wasn't from Mr. Thompson's number. It's a different one." "Call 911, he said firmly. I hesitated. I don't even know what to tell them. There's no proof of anything, just texts. What if it's nothing? "Andrea, please," he said. "Someone texted you at 3 o'clock in the morning telling you not to look out your window. That's not nothing." His words sank in. But before I could reply, I heard a sound from the hallway outside my door. A slow, dragging noise. It stopped, then started again, as if someone was pushing something heavy across the floor. My breath caught in my throat. "Jake, there's someone outside my apartment," I whispered. "Get somewhere safe," he said quickly. "Lock yourself in the bathroom. I'm calling the police right now." I moved quietly towards the hallway, my bare feet silent on the wood floor. The noise outside grew softer, but then there was a quiet thump against my door. It wasn't a knock, it was more like someone pressing their hand against it. Then came a whisper, a man's voice, low and drawn out. "Andrea, open up." Every muscle in my body locked. The voice didn't sound like Mr. Thompson or anyone I knew. It was too calm, too steady. I didn't answer. I didn't move. The voice came again. "I know you're awake." The words sent a shiver down my spine. I backed away from the door, clutching my phone like it was a lifeline. Then my phone buzzed again. A new message from Mr. Thompson, "Do not open the door. Don't speak. Stay quiet." That confirmed my worst fears. Someone was really out there, and my landlord knew. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. The whispering stopped. I heard the faint click of my door handle being tested, then silence. A few seconds later, footsteps moved away, slow and deliberate, fading down the hall. I ran to the bedroom, slammed the door shut, and locked it. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely text. I messaged Mr. Thompson again. "What's happening? Who is that?" He replied instantly. "They broke into one of the empty units earlier. They're still in the building. I called the police, but it'll take time. Don't make a sound." The room suddenly felt smaller. I backed into the corner, trying not to cry, listening for any hint of movement. Faint footsteps echoed outside again. This time, they were heavier, closer. I could hear them stop right outside my door. Then, the unmistakable sound of metal scraping against wood. They were trying to pry the lock. I grabbed my phone and texted Jake again. "He's trying to get in." He replied immediately. "The police are on their way. Just stay hidden. Don't move." My chest tightened. Every second felt like an hour. The scraping stopped, and then everything went silent for a full minute. I could hear only my own breathing. Then came the softest knock, followed by the sound of someone laughing quietly. A low, unsettling chuckle that sent a chill through my entire body. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. Max whimpered from under the bed. Then another text from Mr. Thompson, they're leaving. Stay put until morning. I wanted to believe him, but I didn't dare unlock the door. I stayed where I was, crouched in the corner, gripping my phone, my eyes fixed on the doorknob. Hours passed. The night seemed to stretch on forever. At some point, exhaustion took over. I must have dozed off sitting upright because when I woke up, faint sunlight was coming through the blinds. It was 6:10 a.m. My phone was dead, so I plugged it in. As soon as the screen lit up, I saw one last unread message from Mr. Thompson, sent around 5:40 a.m. It said, "Don't open your door until I get there." Right after reading that, I heard a single, deliberate knock on the door. It was the same knock from last night, but this time it came after sunrise. The knock came again, louder. Sunlight filled the cracks between the blinds, but it didn't make me feel any safer. My heart was pounding, and I thought the person from last night had come back. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway, heavy and purposeful. I leaned closer to the door, listening carefully. And that's when I heard Mr. Thompson's voice call out, "Andrea, it's me. It's Mr. Thompson. Don't open yet. I just want you to answer me." I hesitated. It sounded like him, but after the night I'd had, I didn't trust my own ears. My voice cracked as I asked, "How do I know it's really you?" There was a short pause. Then he said, "You paid your rent late last month and asked for an extension. Only you and I know that." My heart eased slightly, but my hands were still shaking as I unlocked the door. I opened it just enough to see him standing there. He looked more exhausted than I'd ever seen him, with dark circles under his eyes. He held a flashlight in one hand and a crowbar in the other. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You need to get out of here right now. Grab your things. The police are already on their way," he said. "What happened? Was someone really in the building last night?" I asked. He nodded. 2 men. They broke into one of the vacant units on the first floor. When I went to check the noise, they ran upstairs. I didn't want to shout and alert them that I'd seen them, so I texted you instead. I thought you'd listen and leave right away." His voice cracked slightly, and I could see the guilt in his eyes. I stared at him in disbelief. "They were here in this building?" He nodded again, scanning the hallway as he spoke. "They tried to force open 2 apartment doors last night. I heard one of them mention your name." The words hit me like a punch. "My name? How would they know my name?" "I don't know," he said. "But we can figure that out later. Right now, you need to leave." I went back into my apartment and quickly stuffed my laptop, wallet, and Max's leash into a tote bag. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, and every sound made me jump. I could still hear the echo of those whispers in my head. When I came back into the hallway, Mr. Thompson motioned for me to stay behind him as we walked down the stairs. The morning air outside was cold and still. The parking lot was empty except for his truck and my car. As we reached the front steps, he suddenly stopped and put his arm out to block me. "Wait," he whispered. Across the lot, near the line of trees that bordered the property, 2 figures stood partially hidden in the shadows. They were tall, both wearing hooded jackets, their faces impossible to see from where we stood. One of them lifted his head slightly, and I could feel his gaze lock on us. "Back inside, Mr. Thompson ordered quietly. We retreated to the lobby and locked the door behind us. He pulled out his phone and called the police again, explaining that the intruders were still on the property. I pressed my back against the wall, my pulse racing. "Why me?" I whispered. "Why were they saying my name?" He shook his head, rubbing a hand over his face. "I think they've been watching the building. One of the maintenance guys I fired last month might have told them which units were occupied. You live alone and your lights are on late. Maybe they thought you'd be an easy target." The thought made my stomach turn. Within minutes, sirens grew louder in the distance. The two figures outside bolted into the woods as soon as the police cars turned onto the street. Mr. Thompson and I ran to the door and pointed toward the trees. Officers sprinted across the lot, flashlights sweeping through the branches, but the men had vanished. When it was finally safe, I sat on the curb with Max's leash in my hand still trembling. Mr. Thompson stood nearby, talking to Officer Davis, explaining everything that had happened through the night, the sounds, the messages, the break-ins. He handed over his phone to show the texts he'd sent me. When the officer came over to talk to me, I could barely speak. He crouched beside me and said gently, "You did the right thing by staying quiet. If you'd opened that door, they probably would have forced their way in. You're lucky your landlord was paying attention." I turned to look at Mr. Thompson, who gave a small nod. His expression wasn't proud or relieved, just tired, like someone who'd been carrying a burden all night. I thanked him softly. "I thought you were crazy," I admitted. He gave a small, weary smile. "I've been called worse, but I'd rather you think I'm crazy than see you get hurt." For the first time since the night began, I felt safe. But deep inside, I knew something had changed. That morning, as the police searched the property, I realized that safety wasn't something I could take for granted anymore. The police spent most of the morning combing through the property, checking every corner of the lot and the wooded area behind the building. I sat on the back of an ambulance with a blanket around my shoulders, watching the flashing lights reflect off the windows of my apartment. It still didn't feel real. Just hours earlier, I'd been asleep on my couch, and now my home felt like the last place I'd ever want to be again. Mr. Thompson stood beside one of the officers, pointing toward the tree line. His clothes were still wrinkled from the night before, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I could tell the police were asking the same questions that had been spinning in my mind. Who were those men? And why had they been targeting me? When Officer Davis finally approached me, his tone was calm and measured. "Miss Anderson, we found footprints behind the building. 2 sets. Looks like they were watching the complex for at least a few nights. We also found some cigarette butts and food wrappers. Whoever they were, they'd been camping out near the trees for a while." I felt my stomach tighten. They were watching us. He nodded. "Seems that way. We're checking nearby cameras now, but it's possible they'd been planning this for some time." As he spoke, another officer came over carrying a small evidence bag. Inside was a cheap black phone. "We found this near one of the windows," he said. "Looks like a prepaid phone. We'll check for messages." The moment I saw it, my heart sank. "That's the kind of phone that texted me," I said quietly. The number wasn't saved, but the timing. It matched exactly when I looked out my window. Mr. Thompson turned sharply. "Wait, they texted you?" I nodded, holding out my phone. "I got 2 messages. The first one was from you, and the second was from an unknown number. It said, 'Don't look outside again.' That was right before I saw the shadow." The officer's face hardened. "That means one of them had your number." I stared at him, my heart sinking even lower. "But how could they? I don't give out my number to anyone here. Only the landlord has it." Mr. Thompson frowned, thinking hard. "You put it on your rental paperwork." "I keep that locked in my office filing cabinet." His voice trailed off as he looked toward the corner of the building where his office window sat cracked open, its lock broken. "They must have broken in last night before I caught them." The realization hit both of us at once. They hadn't just been watching. They'd gone through my personal information. They knew exactly who I was, what apartment I lived in, and even my phone number. The officer turned to another patrolman. "Run that phone as soon as possible. I want to know if they contacted anyone else in this building." While they worked, Mr. Thompson sat down beside me on the curb. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air was cold and smelled faintly of pine and damp earth. Then he sighed heavily and said, "I got a call last night from one of the tenants on the first floor. They heard noises and thought maybe kids were breaking in. I came to check and that's when I saw them near the back window. They had flashlights, tools. They were prying open a frame. I didn't want to startle them, so I stepped back and called the police. But before I could finish dialing, one of them saw me and ran. That's when I texted you to leave." I turned toward him. "You could have been hurt." He shook his head. "I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about how your unit is right above theirs. If they went up there next." His voice broke slightly. I didn't want to take that chance. As the sun climbed higher, the officers finished their search. They didn't find the men, but what they did find chilled me even more. In the woods,